For more awesome content, head to ystech.org, link in the description. This is the headphone stand right here. Now you might be wondering, doesn't it look familiar? I'm a real fan of DIYPerks and Matt's videos. His videos have such high production value and the actual projects are amazing. I've watched this one video from DIYPerks many times, and last year I finally decided to do something about it. The amazing headphone stand that he made. So I thought, how am I actually going to make it? Well, I don't have access to an automatic router, nor do I have the precision to cut something out like this by hand. But wait, I'm at university and I have access to an amazing amount of resources, including a laser cutter with free materials. A quick shout out to the makerspace from Auckland University. Just a note, I'm not sponsored by them, but I am just a club space member, which is what gets me access to these amazing tools. The laser cutter we have at university is a Tech laser cutter. Very high tech and very expensive, and in my experience has been extremely precise. So to use the laser cutter, we usually use something like Adobe Illustrator, or GIMP is a free software that you can use as well, but I personally use Adobe Illustrator as I personally use it a lot, and usually just the entire Adobe suite. So to Adobe Illustrator I went. I wanted mine to be similar to Matt's from DIYPerks, so I went with a similar shape that had nice curves for the headphones to sit on. I created one design and placed my logo on top of two of them. So how the laser cutter works is it traces the outlines that you've put on the design. So for example, there's red, black and blue. I believe red is to cut, black is to engrave, and blue is to etch. So that's kind of how it works. And you got to make sure the lines are real small. There's an actual measurement that we use at university. I think it's 0.003 millimeters from memory. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, I got my design all made out and I just verified that it's all good to go. So I loaded my design up at the university's computer next to the laser cutter, and then I decided to pick my materials. Now at the time, I didn't want to purchase my own materials as I was kind of short on money, and in any case, they have some pretty good materials at the makerspace in any case. So personally, I picked out some really good looking plywood. I like the grain in it, and it was pretty dark to me. I usually like a darker wood, so that's what I went with. So I picked out that plywood, and it was a couple of millimeters thick. I can't exactly remember. I can measure it now and put it on screen. And I also chose a few pieces of acrylic. So I chose a thicker acrylic. It's relatively thick, and I made sure it was thicker because I needed the headphone stand to be have substantial value. Like, it shouldn't be too thin. It actually needs to be quite wide. So once the laser cutter was all loaded up with all the materials that I wanted, first I did the plywood, which was 4 pieces, and once that was all done, I did the 3 pieces of acrylic. Now the acrylic takes a little bit longer, as it takes a little bit while longer for the laser to actually go through the material, but overall it didn't take too long to cut. It's a pretty high-tech laser cutter from what I've been told. I had my logo engraved on the front piece of the plywood and tried to get the same logo cut out on the back piece for when I put the LED lights in. But the cutout logo failed a little bit because the lines were so small for the laser cutter to cut out properly, and also I kind of think I forgot to actually put a proper support piece for the side of the logo that has the S on it, so that's alright. But however, overall it didn't come out too bad. Once all the pieces were all cut out, I pulled them out and had them sitting at home for nearly a whole year. I had gotten so busy, I had forgot to assemble the whole thing together. But finally in 2022, I had done the impossible. I put it together. So I bought some bolts and nuts from Bunnings, which I thought were going to be of a right thickness from the looks and aesthetics of the headphone stand and the proper length for it to actually go through all the pieces. From there, I wrapped all the pieces together in order with some tape, as I didn't have any suitable clamps. Funny enough, the tape had sufficient pressure to put all of the pieces together, and it ended up being alright when I started drilling into the wood. I also measured with a ruler where I wanted the bolts and divided up the sides to make sure it's even. For drilling into these multiple pieces, I had to use a gold multi-purpose bit with my drill. The only problem that I had with drilling with the gold bit is that it wouldn't go through multiple pieces. So what actually ended up happening is that it refused to go through the wood or the acrylic, and I just had a really bad time with it. So what I ended up doing was switching over to the wooden bit, so the black bit, the black and silver one, and that one managed to do a pretty good job. It was hot enough to go through the acrylic quickly, and it could go through the wood quite easily. Now at the same time, I did have to make sure it would cool down, otherwise it would break. It was a bit difficult, as you can see on screen. My advice is to go half a layer by half a layer, like this, and making sure your bit isn't getting too hot, as it will break otherwise. The bit can break, which has happened to me before if it gets way too hot. One by one, I drilled into the headphone stand and put a bolt in to keep the headphone stand clamped down. One thing to consider is that I could have easily cut out the holes on the laser cutter for these bolts. This was an oversight, but seeing the delay between the design and the actual completion of 1 year, I'd actually say it was alright for me to drill it in the end. After all the bolts were in and nice and tight, I took off the tape, but there was a problem now. I knew this would happen before, and there was residue left on the headphone stand. This was okay, as I knew it would happen, but I kinda hoped it would peel off clean, but you know it didn't. So this was super annoying to get off, and I think I ended up dunking the whole thing in water and scouring off as much as I could. I got most of the residue off, but there's a key thing here, is to just instead use a clamp with a soft cloth below and above to keep the pieces together and not damage the wood. Now I could have just bought some clamps, which I should have done. But at the same time, it ended up being alright for me. I just wanted to get the thing completed. The result looks great, and this headphone stand is super heavy. It's very hefty, which is what I wanted, and it feels a really good quality, which is going to last. Personally, I didn't sand the sides as Matt did in his video, but personally, I prefer the non-blended look on my specific design, which I personally like. One last thing was to oil the front of these pieces. I put linseed oil on the plywood, and I personally think it looks amazing and really brings out the darker tone in the plywood, and it really brings out the grain. I really like that look. It only took about 2 days to dry, as it was super hot in Auckland at the time. So I did a few multiple coats of linseed oil, so it did end up being like 2 to 3 days as far as I can remember, but it was super hot, so it was really quick to dry. Finally, to completion. Also, another thing is I left out the LEDs that Matt put in his video. I might make a part 2 of this video where I do put the LEDs in for the glow and maybe sand it down to make it look all blended. But overall, I am really loving the aesthetic of this headphone stand and the way it looks. It's amazing, and it's custom, just how I like it. But it also cost me less than $5, as I am a member of the University of Auckland's Makerspace, which has been such a blessing. The headphone stand is so practical, and it makes it so easy to leave my headphones on it instead of just chucking them on my desk. I think it adds so much color to my desk as well, as my desk is just fully black. It needed a little bit of color around here. The texture of the wood and the clear acrylic make me love it so much. With my logo engraved on the front, it's even better. Overall, it's amazing, and I couldn't be happier. Thank you to Matt from DIYPerks for the inspiration to do this project, and the original concept as well, that I've only slightly adjusted. Also again, a small shout out to the Makerspace and the Unleashed Space from the University of Auckland. Thank you guys so much for all of these opportunities here at university. It's just been an amazing experience for someone like me and who loves DIY as well. I love DIY projects, and I've done so many projects throughout my whole life, ever since I was a child. I have so many other DIY projects that I've done and completed, but I haven't made videos for yet, and I haven't shared them. If you guys would love to see them, make sure you go and subscribe and check out ystech.org for some more awesome technology content. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have an awesome day, guys. Bye.